You are watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Talking about entire modular homes that were lifted off their foundation. You can't even recognize it's just a 12-foot pile of rubbish.
Milton moves out, but devastation remains in Florida. What we're learning about the fatalities and the impact to coastal communities in a state hit with misery for the second time in less than 2 weeks. Then inflation cooling, but it's far from dead. We break down the numbers and the impact already seen on retirees' Social Security checks. And what new research reveals about the alarming number of teens who've experienced trauma in their young lives. What scientists say are the dangerous impacts. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David, and tonight, post-Milton recovery has begun in Florida after tearing through the state. At least 12 people have died as the storm left an impact of destruction with more than 3 million customers without power. But even before the eye came crashing through, as many as 150 tornadoes spawned by the storm touched down in Florida. In St. Lucie County on the East Coast, at least 5 people are dead as several twisters ripped the county apart in a very short amount of time.
6 different tornadoes touched down in a matter of 20 minutes. Our EOC reported that there were 17 confirmed tornadoes in St. Lucie County. I can't think of a time where we had 1 confirmed tornado, much less that many of them in that short of a period, in that high contact. It's just, northern St. Lucie County is just devastated.
And you can see here one of the tornadoes totally destroyed a parking structure at the sheriff's facility in St. Lucie. Eyewitnesses say the 10,000 square foot building came down in seconds as it was struck. And throughout the night, Milton brought tremendous rains. Some areas near St. Petersburg received as much as 18 inches of rain in as little as 3 hours. This is a look at Hillsborough County, just east of Tampa. Streets completely underwater, and the heaviest rains crossed the entire state all the way to Orlando, where residents there woke up this morning to see some of their roads completely impassable as well. And we do want to go live to Orlando right now. Gracie Johnson tracking the recovery efforts underway there. She's joining us now. Gracie, what's the response been like?
Yes, so really like what you said, the flooding is the big thing that we're seeing in most of the areas we've traveled in Orlando today. This road here, you can see it's receded a lot since we first got out here today, but I'm in about ankle deep water right now. If I were to walk to the deepest part of it, which I was in earlier, it would be right about at the top of my rain boots. But like you said, a lot of people are experiencing this. I spoke with some business owners earlier today in this area. They say that they're used to the rain in this area when hurricanes come through here, but they haven't seen this significant amount of rain in about 2 years.
Wow. Yeah, we can only imagine. So many businesses impacted here, some underwater completely. And we're talking about the livelihoods of families, not just their homes, their businesses. Is there an idea of how those business owners will move forward?
Yes, so I was able to speak with one family-owned business. They had about 23 factories across the state of Florida alone. They told me that their Orlando business was actually hit the hardest. They do have a location in Tampa, but they said that Orlando was flooded more than any of their other locations. They were working today while we were there to get that cleaned up, and they are anticipating, with fingers crossed, to reopen tomorrow. That is, if they get the water under control there.
Fingers crossed. Certainly our prayers are with all of the folks in that area. Thank you so much, Gracie, for that live report. And even as Milton moves further off the coast into the Atlantic Ocean, the back half of the storm still pushing water levels towards the beach. And we want to give you a live look over St. Augustine, where storm surge is still reaching at least 3 feet above ground level. Elevated surge levels have been felt today all the way north to South Carolina. On the west coast of Florida, a live look at downtown St. Petersburg, where a boil water notice is in effect for the city right now. A water main there broke last night. Officials say water pressure is low, so that's how the break happened, but they're working on pressurizing that system to return water service to normal. But as bad as the storm was, Governor Ron DeSantis said they got lucky. It wasn't much worse.
And what we can say is the storm was significant, but thankfully this was not the worst case scenario. The storm did weaken before landfall, and the storm surge, as initially reported, has not been as significant overall as what was observed for Hurricane Helene.
So not a worst case scenario, but it was still a tremendously strong storm. This is a look at Punta Gorda, Florida this morning. Several boats thrown completely onto land as Milton struck with sustained winds of at least 120 miles per hour. Also, take a look at this. The roof of the Tropicana Field, the home of Major League Baseball's Tampa Bay Rays, completely torn off the stadium. This is significant because Tropicana Field is often a staging area for crews responding to weather events. Luckily, no one was inside the venue at the time. No injuries reported. As for power outages, well, at its height today, we saw 3.5 million customers in Florida without power. Crews working hard to restore power throughout the day, but we still know that 3 million customers are without power across the Sunshine State. And let's not forget North Carolina and Georgia, where 59,000 and 33,000 customers respectively are also without power in their states as they continue to recover from Helene that hit just about a week ago. And stay with us as we continue to track developments in the aftermath of Milton throughout the night for you. We're going to have coverage both on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. And we are about a month away, under a month, until the November election, and Vice President Kamala Harris is campaigning in the Southwest today. She recorded a Univision town hall in Las Vegas that will air tonight, and she'll also attend an event in the Phoenix area. Former President Barack Obama is headlining a rally in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania tonight, kicking off a series of events to campaign for Harris in swing states. Former President Bill Clinton will also campaign for her, beginning with small events in Georgia on Sunday and Monday as he makes a pitch to rural Americans. Former President Donald Trump spoke at the Detroit Economic Club in Detroit this afternoon.
The fact is that the Federal Reserve brought the interest rates down a little too quickly. It was too big a cut. And everyone knows that was a political maneuver that they tried to do before the election, but they did the wrong thing.
Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, is hosting a town hall right now, moderated by pro race car driver Danica Patrick. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is joining an Out for Harris Walz call later on this evening. Harris has accepted an invitation for a live CNN town hall on October 23rd in Pennsylvania. We're now waiting for Trump's response, but he's already declined invitations, technically, from CNN and Fox News for a second debate. Attention retirees, a smaller than usual boost to your Social Security benefits in the coming year. Recipients will see their monthly payments inch up by just 2.5% when you look at the cost of living adjustment. That means monthly payments will go up about $50 to a little under $2,000 beginning in January. That's a big drop from the 8% increase we saw last year. The steady decline in inflation limits the annual cost of living adjustment, according to the Social Security Administration. On that topic, we're getting a look at one of the last inflation reports before the election. Critical data for voters who rank the economy as their top issue in this election cycle. The National News Desk's Atra El-Nashar has a look at the latest numbers.
A fresh read on inflation shows prices continue to stabilize, but what Americans are paying for necessities is still, for many, too high for comfort. The 12-month consumer inflation rate dropped slightly to 2.4% in September, thanks in large part to a drop in energy prices. But the cost of housing and food still higher than anyone wants to see. Members of the Federal Reserve watching all of this closely as they decide when and by how much to cut interest rates again.
The overall trend over 12, 18 months is clearly that inflation has come down a lot. The hardest thing that the central bank has to do is to try to get the timing right when there's these moments of transition.
The Fed also cautious of what's going on with the job market. New weekly jobless claims Thursday came in at 258,000, higher than expected, though experts say that's likely a reflection of the effects of Hurricane Helene. On the campaign trail, both presidential candidates zeroing in on the issue.
The only way to end this suffering is to vote for change this November.
Former President Trump trying to capitalize on the sentiment behind polls like this one from CNN, showing 50% of likely voters have more confidence in Trump to handle the economy compared to 39% who trust Vice President Harris.
Foreign leaders and CEOs call me up to complain about our tariffs. My answer will be very simple. Build it in America. You don't have any tariffs.
Harris emphasizes data showing the economy is strong and points to warnings about her opponent's plans if he wins.
My econ policies, Goldman Sachs, the 16 Nobel laureates will tell you that my plans will strengthen our economy. Donald Trump's plans would weaken our economy, would inflate inflation, and would bring a recession on by the middle of next year.
And there's plenty more economic data on the way. We'll get fresh reads not just on inflation, but also jobs and wages over the 5 days before Election Day, November 5th.
And Atra, when it comes to top issues for voters, we know immigration, the economy, and women's rights are where we see a real big partisan split. Tell us more about the new polling you reviewed.
Yeah, so new polling by Gallup that I found interesting, Amira, it shows Republicans are far more likely to view the economy as one of their top issues. And for Democrats, it's not even in their top 5. Of course, this is generally speaking, each voter is different. But when asked which issues are extremely important to them as they choose who they'll vote for president, Gallup found that the top 5 issues for Republicans are the economy, immigration, terrorism and national security, crime, and taxes. While Democrats said democracy in the U.S., the Supreme Court justices the next president will be able to pick, abortion, health care, and education.
Really interesting split there. Atra Al-Nashar reporting for us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much. A panel of judges heard arguments today about whether or not certain immigrants should be shielded from deportation. The case involves people who grew up in the United States but were brought here illegally as children. President Biden renewed former President Obama's DACA program that gave the group a path to citizenship. But last September, a judge said the program was executive overreach. DACA was in place for existing recipients, but banned from new application approvals. A decision isn't expected quickly, and the ruling will impact about 535,000 people. A trial date set for Sean Diddy Combs, who appeared in a Manhattan federal court today for the first time since being arraigned. On May 25th, 2025, the sex trafficking case that alleges he coerced men and women into sexual encounters will begin. Combs faces over 100 separate allegations of sexual assault across several states. The hip-hop mogul, who has pleaded not guilty, is in custody at a New York City jail where he will remain until his pending trial. Marriott International says it will pay out $52 million and make security improvements to settle claims over data breaches that impacted more than 300 million customers. The FTC says hackers accessed passport information, card numbers, birth dates, email addresses, and other data between 2014 and 2020. Marriott has also agreed to give American customers a way to request that their personal information be deleted. Ethel Kennedy, the widow of former U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, has died from complications of a stroke. Her grandson, former Massachusetts Representative Joe Kennedy III, shared the news on X today. Ethel became a prominent human rights activist after her husband's assassination in 1968. She leaves behind 9 children, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who ran for president this year before dropping out and endorsing Trump. Ethel was 96 years old. Coming up, the spectacular Northern Lights could be visible much further south than initially thought, where you might be able to see them coming up. And then the national program that's helping change the lives of people who've suffered with heart problems. And later, the scientific technology pioneered by a University of Washington professor that won him the prestigious Nobel Prize in chemistry. We'll be right back. Tonight, a decision on how to respond to Iran's ballistic missile attack. Israel's security cabinet has reportedly voted on a plan, and while specifics are not yet known, the country's defense minister said the retaliation would be, quote, powerful, precise, and above all, surprising. Some Iranians telling CNN they are growing increasingly concerned about the damage that could be done.
We don't want actually to be destroyed by any enemies.
We are ordinary people. We are not military, we are not politicians. We're just caring about my country.
In Lebanon, Israeli strikes have hit central Beirut, reportedly targeting a Hezbollah operative. Just after 2 Hezbollah commanders were killed in other parts of the country. This as Israeli officials draw criticism for tank fire that hit 2 UN peacekeeping troops, a body that represents 50 different nations. The UN today said it was a grave violation of international law. France and Italy demanding answers. Israel has yet to respond. Meantime, in central Gaza, more than 24 dead in the aftermath of an Israeli strike on a school sheltering displaced Gazans, according to hospital officials in the Hamas-run enclave. The Israeli military says it was targeting terrorists operating inside the building and says it took numerous steps to protect civilians. Both CNN and the AP documented seeing children being transported to hospitals with life-threatening injuries. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration issued a severe geomagnetic storm watch for today into tomorrow after an outburst from the sun was detected earlier in the week. The blast could temporarily disrupt power and radio signals through the day. NOAA predicts this storm to reach a 4 out of 5 on the severity scale. But with the disruptions comes the possibility of the Aurora Borealis light show. Tonight, NOAA says auroras could be visible across much of the northern United States and even as far south as Alabama and as far west as California. In our health alert tonight, most high schoolers say they experienced trauma as a kid. That's according to a new CDC study that found 3 in 4 high school students went through at least one possibly traumatic event like violence, abuse, or exposure to substance use problems. These events, known as adverse childhood experiences, are linked to a higher risk of chronic physical and mental health issues. And if someone you know and you love has had a heart event, you may want to see if a peer support program is available to help in healing. Medical reporter Liz Bonas tells us about one program, Mended Hearts, with volunteers in hundreds of hospitals nationwide.
Those patients have often had a serious heart event that leads to the need for heart surgery.
This past Friday, I had a 3-way bypass, and I said it was successful.
Michael Bouts just had his 2nd procedure, and from the past, he knows.
Because the challenges for me was anxiety.
So luckily, here at Ohio's Christ Hospital, he got connected within the last few days.
Go through these things where it's like, it's emotional.
With Mended Hearts mentor, Rick Gardner.
We are a volunteer organization of former heart surgery patients that visit the current heart surgery patients.
Rick had his own surgery a few years ago. He knows the anxiety that can come with it and that you often blame yourself.
I feel great now, a lot more energy. So I thought I was getting old and fat and wasn't getting enough exercise, which was all true, but I wouldn't have exercised my way out of my problem.
Madison Kramer, the volunteer supervisor here, told me each chapter of the Mended Hearts peer-to-peer support program is based on the idea that
really no one knows what it's like to go through it except someone who's been through it.
I mean, it's good to know what you're feeling is normal, because you have your good days and your bad days.
Michael says getting connected to Rick, who was just honored with this team here for being part of the Mended Hearts Central Region Hospital of the Year, has helped him jumpstart his recovery. You see, as Rick knows.
I've been through it, and they are going to start feeling better soon.
That was Liz Bonas reporting the end of an era. Men's tennis great Rafael Nadal retiring. The Spanish champion will hang up his racket after next month's Davis Cup finals. The 38-year-old won 22 Grand Slam titles. His game defined by his blend of power and finesse, going toe-to-toe with fellow greats Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic for the better part of 2 decades. Nadal has competed through several injuries that slowed down his game in the tail end of his career. But what a career he had. And coming up, the reason for a serious shortage of ESL teachers in Tennessee and the challenges in hiring more. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Tennessee with a shortage of English as a second language teachers.
Read the first couple of pages of one.
An ESL teacher in Middle Tennessee who wishes to remain anonymous says there are about 1,000 ESL students in their district, with more than 120 of them being kindergartners. The ESL teacher says the numbers are alarming, doubling in the last year, and resources are not keeping up. Patrick Bassnett with Professional Educators of Tennessee says Nashville has seen a significant increase in migrants.
And it was determined that there are over 120 languages being spoken in our schools.
Bassnett explains schools are trying to hire more ESL teachers, but they face obstacles with communication gaps, inadequate interpreter services, and a scarcity of educational materials available in the students' native languages.
What starts with anger, tears, and humiliation.
Nathan? Good to see you, Nathan. Ryan Wolf, how are you? Let me see. Turn around. Looks much, much better.
Ends with a 12-year-old boy and his mother forever grateful for the kindness of a stranger.
He's the reason why I have confidence. Now I have more confidence than ever.
This is what supposed friends did to him while at school. 7th graders using clippers from home to humiliate him with a haircut that left mom, she says, horrified. She immediately files a complaint at school and voices her frustration in a post on social media. That's when a barber named Edgar Rocha comments that he wants to help her son for free.
To see somebody get bullied like that, I have a son too. He's in middle school, and I don't want never for him to go through that either, you know?
The excitement over David Baker winning a Nobel Prize so great that students in his lab are making buttons with his likeness on it.
And yeah, this is, I think, really a prize for all of us.
First, they design a protein on the computer. Then they create it and test it in the lab.
We get the proteins out, and then we determine whether they actually do what we wanted them to do.
Dr. Baker spent years developing the tools necessary to design these synthetic proteins to solve big problems like cancer.
Use those tools to make a protein that can specifically only target the cancer while not targeting any of your healthy cells.
And coming up, the outstanding achievement a 65-year-old professional golfer just made during the PGA Tour in Utah. We'll be right back. The PGA Tour is back in Utah today for the first time in 61 years, but it's who's playing today that's making all the headlines. 65-year-old Utah native J. Don Blake teed off today about 2 hours ago for the 500th start in his PGA career. Only 6% of PGA players who have made 20 starts have made it to 500, and this is an achievement Jay dreamed about for a long time, but never really saw coming. His career started back in 1981, and through 2004, he played in 496 events. It took until 2018 to get to 499, and he probably thought that was it. But with the tour coming back to his hometown on Tuesday in front of family and friends, he was literally handed a tour exemption to make it to 500. And Jay, we are very happy for you. Job well done, sir. That does it for this edition of the National News Desk. Thank you so much for watching.